Welcome back to She Can, where women lead by example. We interview women from all over the world to hear their stories because it's easier to be what you can see. Our women mentors and role models guide and support you on your journey. And we are so excited to talk to Linda Dröfn Gunnarsdóttir today. Welcome, Linda, to She Can. You lead the first purpose-made women's shelter project in Iceland, which is currently being built. You help domestic violence survivors. You're the director of the Icelandic Association for Women's Shelters, and you provide accommodation for women who have been subjected to violence in their homes. You're one of the 100 most inspiring BBC Women of the Year 2024. Congratulations, Linda. Tell us a bit more about yourself and how you got to where you are today.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. Yes, well, the work that we are doing is really built on the shoulders of remarkable women. This shelter was opened in 1982 by a women's movement. And it was like a continuum from the first women's strike that we had in Iceland in 1975. So we are going to be celebrating the 50-year anniversary next year of the first women's strike in Iceland. And so we were gonna call it the Women Year of Iceland next year. So it's gonna be a lot of happenings going on, but not only celebration, but we did form like a list of requirements that we have sent to the government that we want them to fulfill in the Women's Year 2025. So yeah, this was like a political movement in the beginning, but then they decided to open up these women's shelters that did not exist before. And they actually decided to take that apart. So it's not a political place, it's just open to anyone. And we are very focused on, even though we are taking part in the discourse, of course, we are focused on being neutral in a way that it is accessible for any women, wherever they come from whichever political views or so on. So I have been working in the shelter for 3 years now, so I'm relatively new in the shelter work. But before that, I worked a lot with refugee women in Iceland and helping them to adjust to Icelandic reality. So that was my background before starting this work. So I did not come in just like fresh from outside. I had been working in this field of assisting and developing assistance for women. So yeah.
Linda, so tell us a little bit more. When we who don't know Iceland well, we always think Iceland is sort of the nirvana, right? You have the most amazing data in terms of equity, inclusion, and all the data points are much better than most other countries in Europe. So tell us a little bit about the relevance of the work that you do.
Yeah, well, the problem with when we are ranking countries in equity or in gender or gender basis, we do not take into account gender-based violence. So, and that is a big problem because there will never be equality without taking this into account, of course.
Yeah.
So we do have good numbers in some fields, and then in others not so much. And in gender-based violence, we are just on the same rank with other countries around us. So 40% of Icelandic women have been subjected to any kind of violence in their life, or some kind of violence. So this is a pandemic in Iceland, just like everywhere else. And the problem that we are fighting this illusion of nirvana or illusion, or this Nordic paradox, as we call it. So there are these voices that are like, why are you making such a fuss? We are there, so we don't have to be doing this anymore. And that's really complicated to try to fight the systematic approach of that this is not necessary anymore, because we are having so many problems in Iceland in this field. And actually, we are lacking behind in many aspects. For example, in our approach to secure the women, for
Mm.
example, using restraining orders. We do not use them as much as
Mm.
other Nordic countries. It's
Mm.
much more difficult to get them through.
Yeah.
It's much more difficult to get the perpetrator out of the home, and also the sentences for the perpetrators are much lower in these cases. We actually just had a femicide now, a sentence where he was not sentenced for murder, but for an
Mm.
attack, even though the woman died. So we are just facing the same problems here in Iceland, but it's just a double fight because we're also fighting this paradox of that everything is just fine.
Yeah.
So it's a bit complicated.
So you have a lot of work to do, Linda. What would you say are the main lessons of your work so far, and how does that inform your strategy, your future strategies, and what is the big vision that you need to get to?
Mhm. Well, in my work at the shelter, the big vision is, of course, helping the survivors, women and
Yeah.
children, and how we approach that.
Mm.
So our approach is that we are seeing better that they need more help and more time if they are not to go back, because the danger of going back is so high.
Yeah.
So it has been shown that they need a lot of time in the shelter to get through this phase, that this possibility of going back to the
Mm.
same situation, and
Mm.
they need a lot of counseling. And the
Yeah.
children also need a lot of space and counseling as well. And the mothers need counseling of how to deal with their children. So
Mm.
it's a lot of work. So just getting out of the relationship is not always enough. So we are trying to encourage women that even though they have a couch at their parents' home or at a friend's home, the danger of going back is so high that we encourage them to go into a shelter anyway, to get the counseling and to
Mm.
get all this sheltering idea of
Mm.
just being apart and having this time to work through this. Uh, the main big idea that we're working from is just like really how do we stop the violence. Like we have been doing so much awareness raising and education, and what it has brought us is women are coming in earlier,
Yeah.
they are reporting earlier and seeking help. Family members are seeing the red flags earlier and so on, but the violence doesn't go down. We're just having a
Mm.
new generation with the same violence, even though they know the signs and what this is. So we really need to take a step back and explore, like, why isn't the violence going down at all?
Yeah.
Why is it like we see in our numbers, it's just any kind of people from all layers of the society with
Mm.
all kinds of backgrounds, we have this same problem. So we are taking this step back, and that is actually what is happening in Europe in general, is taking the step back, focusing on this primary prevention, focusing on this multi-layered approach, where it isn't enough just to have like awareness raising for a few months or a few weeks and then just continue. We
Mm.
really have to approach this from many layers of society at the
Yeah.
same time, and
Yeah.
stop sending out this message that domestic violence is not as serious as other types of violence. Like, we are not getting the same focus or
Mm.
media attention as
Mm.
other kinds of violence.
Yeah.
And and the judges and it is just approached in a different way. It's still thought of as the something that happens within the walls of the home, so it must be other type of violence and some kind of privacy. Even the
Mm.
way we talk about it as a family disaster in Iceland,
Yeah.
not as a femicide, just a family disaster, as if it is something natural that just happens and we cannot help it.
Mm.
So this is the big vision, that we really need to get these, like, really keep on helping these victims, but or survivors, but at the same time, okay, like, really, how do we get to the source of this?
Yeah. To work on the root problem, and that's about education, isn't it?
It's about education, yeah, and education for the frontliners, the people that are really working with the women,
Mm.
social workers, police officers, judges, healthcare workers. So these are the people that really have to know the signs, know how to approach these women, because it's really, really complicated at times.
Yeah.
The circle of violence is really a complicated thing, and how to approach them and get them to talk and really get through to them is a complicated matter.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a worldwide problem, and it's something that we're still not comfortable to look at because
Yeah.
we think the home is sort of sanctimonious, or it's untouchable.
Mhm.
And thank you for that. I'm wondering, the women who come first in, how do you deal with the beginning? What tips would you have to women listening that think, I am experiencing this? What
Yeah,
are the tips for women who are thinking, this is not right and I need to reach out to someone?
right. Uh, yeah, because this is a really good question, because there are so many women out there that are really have been in violence for a long time, and they
Mm,
have been made to believe that they are the problem,
yeah.
or this is not violence, or this is normal. So in most of our cases that come into our like we have this service providing counseling interviews for women as well that are not staying in the shelter. This is actually the biggest part of our work that is growing the fastest. And these are women that are coming in and really not sure if they're in violence, like if this is a violent relationship, and really excusing, like, I shouldn't really be here, taking up a space from somebody else. And I think in almost every single case, it is definitely domestic violence, but they are
Mm,
just not, they are just have been made to believe that this is normal, or that they are the problem, or if they would do something different, this would be over. So if you are, and there are researchers that show that if you have this instinct, then almost always it's right and correct.
mm,
So if this is something that you are thinking about, then just please act on it, even if you're not sure. So the first steps that a perpetrator takes is ensuring isolation.
yeah.
So they get really isolated from family, from friends. They often move away, or perpetrator talks about this is a problem. You are always so annoying when you meet your mother, or your friends are you just act different when you're around your friends or whatever. So you stop interacting with people around you, and this escalates into isolation. So breaking the isolation is really, really difficult. I do realize that, and the threshold into the shelter or into some services like this can be so high. So I'm just really encouraging women to pick up the phone and get the counseling.
Mm,
Uh, in almost every country, you can get some free counseling, regarding this. So even if it's just to get a counseling from a third party that does not know you, you can just listen to your story and reflect upon it, and really talk through it. That's always the first step, just breaking out of the isolation, or reach out to a family member if you do not trust yourself into like going into counseling, but just like really trying to take these first steps. And I realized that it's really scary. And it has been shown that the violence can escalate when the perpetrator sees that you are trying to break away. So sometimes, if you're really afraid, you really have to just plan it. So sometimes when they come in, it has been like a plan for some time, like they know that they are going out of town or going for a work trip or whatever. So they plan ahead and they make the appointment, and they come when they are safe to come.
mm,
And we are all trained into making sure that it does not get out, or you are not getting messages on your phone from us like you have an appointment at the women's shelter. And
mm.
like we are really trained in making sure that we don't leave a track, because we do understand that it's scary. So just reach out in any way possible.
Linda, thank you for that. I'm wondering, what are the main challenges you face with the work that you do?
Um, I think our main challenge is probably women who live out like in the countryside in isolated areas. That is a challenge to get them into the shelter because
Mm,
they have to leave behind their work and their surroundings. And but at the same time, I believe that it is better for them to go out of their uh, hometown when it's really small because it's so difficult to get the distance from everything. But we need a better system to support them when they go, like if they cannot work and things like that, and their children maybe come with them, that we have a good support system for them when they come into the shelter. Another problem is our women that are uh, using drugs.
mm,
We cannot have them if they're actively using. They
mm,
cannot stay in a women's shelter in Iceland because we run the women's shelter like a big home. We
yeah.
run it a little bit different from the typical shelters. It's like because we want to get them out of their isolation. So we are really focused on they have their privacy, of course, but we also have a lot of spaces that are common spaces.
Mm,
So we eat together dinner. There's a housewife that is like baking when the children come home. So there's this like this homey feeling, and you always know that it's the same every day. It's something secure, something repetitive. So understandably, a woman that is abusing drugs cannot stay in that surroundings. So
yeah.
we are in a desperate need in Iceland for a shelter that is focused on the needs of these women, that they can come in there because this is often the most traumatizing and severe abuse are the women that are using drugs, and they are um, really attached to their perpetrators because they live many times in the houses of the perpetrators or are attached to them in that way. So they are not coming into like overnight shelters for homeless women. These
Mm,
are not the same women. These are women that are abusing drugs, but they are living in houses of men that are abusing them.
yeah.
So getting them out of this situation without pressuring them to stop using drugs, but just to start getting them out of the violence, because this is a vicious circle. We don't know which comes first, the violence or the drugs. It's just a circle that goes around and around. And you cannot be taking them out of the violence and at the same time telling them that you need to get sober. So just getting them out of the violence, getting them secure. And we have shelters like this. For example, in Denmark, I know there are shelters that are
Mm,
focused on this, and we need that in Iceland. So
yeah.
these are the challenges to have to be saying no to some women
Mm,
and rejecting them in into the shelter. It's really, really hard.
yeah, that must be terrible. Yeah. Linda, what do you feel are the lessons that served you the most so far? You know, these lessons that give you qualities
Mhm.
that really serve you.
Yeah. I think after working with people for so many years, uh, people that come many times in need of assistance and they are at very difficult time in their lives, is that at the same time as you must be aware of the imbalance of power because you are in another power situation than they are,
Mm,
but at the same time, always my approach is always trying to approach them as equals, trying to remember that the roles can be shifted at any time.
mm,
I could become a refugee tomorrow if something would happen
mm,
in Iceland.
mm,
I would become a victim tomorrow if I would fall in love with a perpetrator. So it is so important for us to meet them where they are and let them be the driver in
yeah,
this journey that they are taking, but not to
yeah,
take the control. They have not had control for so many years sometimes, and for such a long time. So it's so important for them to take the control, even though I don't always agree with the path that they are taking. But this is their path, and sometimes they go back or they make decisions that you like. Okay, I would not have done that, but we never say that. We are there to support them
yeah,
and and this is what has really helped me through my work with other people, that is really just to see them as not some subjects or some work to be done. They are just people like me, and they have the same dreams and same needs. We all have the same basis in the end. We just survive different traumas, and that does not make me any wiser than them. And you always just have to remember, and it's just so interesting because sometimes you meet people that are really trained in their field. uh, I don't know, like a social worker, or I have, for example, witnessed a woman that had worked as a kindergarten teacher for like 20 years. And then they had somebody come into the kindergarten. This was, for example, in a small town in Iceland, and we had a group of refugees coming there. And there was just a culture shock also for the people living in the town.
Mm,
And she had these children from Syria coming into the kindergarten, and like all of a sudden she just forgot all her expertise because this was a new subject or
mm,
new person, and she was just like, I don't know how to talk to him or how to treat him or how to approach him. And I really had to like sit down with her and like, this is just a child. It
yeah.
doesn't matter where he comes from. He just has
Mm,
the same needs as any other child,
mm,
even though you have to bear in mind, of course, the special needs of everyone, and you have to be aware of that there are differences and things you can't say or whatever. But in the like to start from this core point that we are just all humans with dreams and needs, and like we just really in the end want what's best for us and our children in any situation. So this has really helped us to like get any so many different cases of women coming in, and just always start at this bottom point, like I'm just a human
yeah.
sitting in front of
Yeah.
another human.
Yeah. I love that you said that, and it's very powerful to meet people where they're at.
Yes, it
Li-
is.
Linda, so what do you want your impact to be on Iceland? If you have, a magic wand and, this could be your work or your legacy,
Right.
what would you like that to be?
It was such a big question. uh, well, I would love to be like it's maybe this twofold, like really to have a place for women and children where they feel safe to come, of course. That is an impact, to send out this message like, we are here for you. You are not alone. There are so many like you. But like the big impact I would really, really like to leave is just, if I had a magic wand, I would like to restart this thing all over again, this communication between genders, and this power struggle that we are dealing with.
Mm,
And because the boys are they are not doing good either.
no.
So they are feeling really badly in schools. They are having problems finding their role, and and it seems like that we have this boiling patriarchy still everywhere in everything that we do, and this power struggle between the genders that
Yeah.
really blows out in close relationships. When things start to go wrong, we see them like really blow up, and this is just really uh, holding us all back.
Yeah. It
uh,
is.
like all genders, it's holding us all back, and it's holding back the power, like the struggle for equality. And this is what we have seen in the women, like when we went to the women's strike last year, and we came together, women that are fighting for equal pay, women that are fighting for the third shift, and then the uh, gender-based violence, that this is all connected.
Yeah.
So you will never get equality on the work market, like real equality on the work market, unless you really take down the violence, and vice versa. So, like for example, in Iceland, yes, we do have a lot of women in big positions, like a president and the
Mm,
police commissioner and things like that. So that's why we are scoring so high when we are comparing countries. But at the same time, we have uh, these women work posts. Like for example, schools,
Mm.
kindergartens, hospitals, like caretaking, cleaning. These are just women work, and they are paid so much less
Mm.
than other types of work. So
Yeah.
if it's dominated by women, it's like way down there. So it's not enough to compare one lawyer to another lawyer. Okay, it's nice that if it's a woman or a man, they have the same pay. That's we have that now here in Iceland, but we still have these women classes that are just underpaid because they are built up by women.
Yeah.
So, and this is all connected. So if I had a magic wand, I would really want to try to start things over.
Yeah. Linda, if you could give a tip to a young girl listening, thinking, this is the work I want to do, this is what matters to me, that's how I want to matter in the world, what would you tell her to do? If you're, in your late years of school, what would you tell her? What kind of education could she go into? How could she make a difference?
Yeah, it really depends on the country where you work, what the background is, what background is needed to go into this kind of work. I know that in many shelters, for example, you need to have social services. Uh, in Iceland, I feel that it's very important that they have different background because
Mm.
we have different women coming in.
Yeah.
So what we do is that the women that work for me are with very different background, but all connected to this subject in some way. But
Mm.
like they are maybe nurses or teachers or there are social workers, but they are not working in the shelter as social workers.
Yeah.
So they come there with this background and then they get a lot of training in the shelter on how we approach the women. So they are counselors, but they are not specialists. So you're not getting a treatment within the shelter.
Mm.
But of course, you can go many different ways and work on this subject. We have lawyers that have like really focused their studies and their interests in this field. So they are only working on this kind of cases. We have social workers, we have psychiatrists that really just take their education and focus it on this field. So it's always just best to start with something that really interests you, and then you can narrow it down into this field if it really is what you want to do, and use your expertise into that field from many different aspects.
Yeah, thank you. Linda, what are your plans and goals for the next years? What are the sort of, real functional points that you need to plan for and that you want to get to?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I want to finish building the new shelter.
Yeah,
It's planned to be ready in 2026. I want to um, get new shelters for women with special needs, like I talked about.
yeah,
I want to get the government and like more the society with us into this multi-layered approach against gender-based violence. So we are getting a new government now. They are forming now, and it's actually formed by three women on the top. So I'm really gonna try to focus on getting them with us into this fight. So we will be fixing things and just mainly sending out this message this is not okay. We are going to fight this, and yeah, this is not acceptable. That's the most important thing.
yeah,
So that's the goal, to really get more people with us and all genders. So this is not always
exactly.
just women
Yeah,
working on this, just all genders combined working on this
yeah,
end goal.
yeah. It's about allyship. It's about boys and girls understanding and being taught at the root
Yeah,
cause.
yeah,
Linda,
exactly. And that's what we have been focusing on, is to try to start really young and not to be talking about violence, but more about compassion,
mm,
about intellectual development, about how we deal with problems, how we interact, like just the core things on like this unity And instead of like talking about violence, it's just more about how do we not use violence, and this is the basis of that.
Yeah. Linda, I think, what would you like our listeners to take away from your story?
I would like the listeners to take away from the story is that you don't have to be working in this field to make a difference.
Mm,
Like we are all in this together. This is like a societal problem that we are having, and it connects. It touches all of us. It connects with all of us. If you have children, um, if you're working in the field, whatever, it's just we can all make a difference in the way we talk, in the way we talk to our peers, or in the way we talk to our children about women, about women's rights, about violence, what is okay, what is not okay. Words are so powerful.
mm,
So, and actions, of course, also. And there's so much that we can do, even though we are not working in this field, just to show that we care. And I really encourage men and other genders to really come and fight this fight with us. And I know it's a bit scary now because the discourse is so hostile. So when you start, if you go on these social media, it is a backlash going on that people are allowing themselves to say so mean things to people that are stepping up. So we really, this is the time to focus on backing up these people that are really showing courage and stepping up.
yeah.
So it's a project for the whole community.
It is, Linda, and I'm so grateful for you to tell your story. That is having the conversations, that is showing that there is a space for victims of violence, but also all the ways and how we can work on the root causes for really spearheading all the important conversations in your government, in your society culture. And that is definitely a model that is also a role model for other countries. So thank you so much, Linda, for telling your story today.
Thank you.